Hello, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Andrea. We have a baby girl who does not want to take a nap, but we're going to be talking about my birth story with her today. But before I get into that, I wanted to give first a disclaimer that if home birth or unassisted birth is triggering to you, this might not be the video for you. And then I wanted to give a preface about my first two pregnancies leading up before this. So with my first son, I was a first time mom and I didn't know anything about pregnancy or labor and delivery, and I went into it very naive and thought like everything was going to be fine and I was healthy, and I had a really hard pregnancy. I was very sick, and even though I had a midwife, she was a CMN or CNM and very hospitalized and didn't teach me anything or do anything really natural for me. And she let my preeclampsia go undiagnosed until I went to the hospital to get checked out for some symptoms and not feeling baby move as often, and I was diagnosed with preeclampsia and got induced, which I should have. Um, and that was not a horrible labor and delivery, but definitely not fun being induced. And everything went seemingly smooth. My second was relatively easy pregnancy, but yet again, my OBGYN just went along with the traditional or modern medical way of doing pregnancy and labor and delivery, and to play it safe because I had a high reading with my blood pressure. She wanted to play it safe and induced me at 37 weeks, which was a horrible judgment call. And I don't actually believe I had gestational hypertension. And my baby suffered because of it. He had a hard time for about 2 weeks after the induction, where he didn't eat. He lost a lot of weight. I was under a lot of stress, having to pump and bottle feed, but also still try to introduce the breast. And that was just really traumatic. And from that experience, I decided that I was never going to let that happen again. So after that pregnancy, I actually lost a lot of weight and I started working on my health, trying to manage my hormones because I obviously knew something was wrong when I was very sick, like sick into my third trimester with my pregnancies, but I was medicated and I really struggled. I had a lot of symptoms. So after my second, I was really trying to get things regulated, but surprise, I got pregnant when my son was about like 15 months old, and I knew that that could happen. I mean, I was married, not on birth control. You know how that happens. So with where I live, there is limited options on prenatal care, and it's just you just go to the OB and you have a hospital birth and you just do all of those things that I didn't want to do, that I had kind of been traumatized by in my last pregnancy. So although I had searched for a midwife, I had realized that either I was going to have to pay completely out of pocket, which just wasn't an option at that time. And even if I did, they were really far away. They weren't going to be able to treat me in my home and give me the home birth that I wanted. And after a lot of prayer and talking with my husband about it, we had decided that that wasn't going to be the best option for us. I don't even think it was going to be an option. So I found a midwife or an OBGYN, and I decided that I was just going to advocate for myself and that we were going to make sure I was treated and have the pregnancy that I wanted. So when I had made the decision that I was going to have a home birth because based off my trauma from my last pregnancy and deliveries, a hospital birth was not even an option. It was out the window. We had prayed about it. My husband had decided that that's what was best. And so my baby is like trying to grab the microphone. Um, we did a bunch of research. I actually read a book called Home Birth on Your Own Terms, which is geared towards unassisted births. And I recommend that to you, even if you do have a midwife or an OBGYN. These are skills that I think everybody should know. I mean, this is your birth. You should be prepared for what could happen: resuscitation, hemorrhage, any complications. And I did extensive research my whole pregnancy. My husband and my birth team did as well. And so we felt equipped and we had God on our side and He had led us to this. So we knew that we were going to be okay. And had everything not gone to plan, we have a hospital about 5 minutes away. And so that was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And we don't have to tell anyone that. I don't have to tell anyone my birth plan. I want prenatal care based on my previous pregnancies, but I don't have to tell anyone. And I am willing to take responsibility if things go wrong. And that's, if you make this decision, you have to take responsibility. And I was willing to do that because I knew that things were going to be fine. So I ended up not liking my OB at all. And I should have, in hindsight, just gotten a new OB. But where I'm at, there's very limited options. And so I just stuck it out. But we did not get along. And I see things in a more natural way and try to find more natural remedies. And I was kind of like scoffed at the whole time. But I'm confident in what I know in my research. And I just would say, well, that's what I'm going to do. And she'd be like, okay, well, this is my opinion. And I would take her medical advice because she is a medical professional and she knows more than me in certain areas. But ultimately, she works for me, so I make the decisions. So everything actually was pretty fine, but I did suffer again with really bad morning sickness, which was probably undiagnosed hyperemesis now that I know more. But I was medicated with Zofran, which now that I know more about that, I won't be doing that again. But because of that, they couldn't really see the severity of how sick I was. And if had I not gotten medicated, I probably would have been sick all the way into my third trimester because I would try to get off the medication and then I'd get really sick again. And then the other thing was that I was gaining weight really quickly and I couldn't understand what was happening because I had a much cleaner diet and made things from scratch and all these things more than I had in my first two pregnancies. So I couldn't figure out what was going wrong. And that should have been a red flag to me and to my doctor, who's a medical professional. But she said because I was gaining weight at a steady rate that she wasn't concerned until it came about that 28-week mark where you usually get your glucose tolerance testing done. When I decided I wasn't going to drink the glucola drink and do that testing, I was just going to do finger pricks at home and test it with a glucometer. And when I brought in my results, she had told me that based on my results, I would be considered gestationally diabetic. And that was really disappointing because I knew that that was going to put me down that path of needing an induction. So I had done all this research and changed little tweaks in my diet because my diet was already good. It's just I wasn't balancing things correctly. And I was able to manage it with just diet alone. And that didn't really seem to be enough. It was like, oh, well, you have gestational diabetes, so you're going to have a big baby. And even though before that we had been concerned, she was concerned that I had a small baby, and now she could be a big baby. Um, but anyways, I was getting all these ultrasounds and biophysical profiles, and now looking back, I wish I wouldn't have done any of that because everything was fine, and the risk is actually way worse than the pros. Based on my situation, I know that can be helpful for a lot of people in their situations, but for us, everything was fine. Every time I would come back, oh, she's fine. Oh, she's fine, but come back for another ultrasound. Oh, she's fine, come back again. And so I would just do it and then be like, but I'm not going to take your advice because they would say, oh, but we should schedule an induction. We should do this. And I wasn't going to do that. I told her I wasn't going to get induced unless I got preeclampsia again. So everything was going fine, even though I was having um, aches and pains. I was managing my blood sugars. When it came time to get my GBS strep testing, I declined that. I'm not concerned about that. I never had that before. And you could have it and then it could go away or vice versa. And so I just was doing protocols at home to avoid that. But of course, she didn't like that either. She didn't like a bunch of the decisions I was making, and I knew as we were getting closer to the end of my pregnancy, I was going to be seeing her more, and she was going to want to start doing cervical checks and all these things that they usually do in the hospital. And that's when the tension was rising, and she wanted me to schedule an induction because people who have gestational diabetes, they should be getting induced at 39 weeks, even though I was managing it. I wasn't on insulin. My baby actually wasn't big based on these ultrasounds, and we know that third trimester ultrasounds are completely inaccurate most of the time and lead to unnecessary inductions and complications. And so I stuck to my guns and said I wasn't going to do that. But I had never gone into labor naturally, so I don't know when I typically would go into labor. All I had to base it off of was how my inductions were. So I was just like, I will go into labor when this baby is ready. And unless something comes up, of course I'll go to the hospital. But unless something comes up, I'm going to stick it out. Well, my due date came and passed. And I was like, well, this is just normal. But for her, that was like, oh, we need to schedule an induction. I'll see you in a few days. Like, after your due date, they have you come in like twice a week, or maybe it's like once a day. I don't even, or yeah, every day. I don't know. But she was really freaked out by it, and I wasn't. And so I was looking for any sign that something was going to happen, and nothing was happening. And I think that what was going on actually helped distract me from it, because I was constantly having Braxton Hicks, and so I couldn't tell when an actual contraction was happening. But the day before I went into labor, my washing machine stopped working. And so that was all I worried about, was like, how am I going to wash our clothes and clean cloth diapers? And when we have our home birth, how am I going to clean everything? And so that's what my focus was. But little did I realize I was actually having early labor that day. And actually, on one of my last non-stress tests, they were picking up contractions, and my doctor was concerned that I was going to go into active labor and have the baby too fast and not make it to the hospital. But I wasn't concerned because I knew I wasn't going to be going to the hospital. And so I told her I wasn't concerned about it, and I didn't want a cervical check. So I didn't know where I was, how far along, and I wasn't concerned about it because it doesn't really mean anything to me. You could be 2 centimeters for 3 weeks or 2 centimeters for 2 hours. So I ended up just going to bed that night, and I woke up at about midnight, and I was in labor. I had woken up with contractions that were, I mean, obviously painful enough to wake me up, and my Braxton Hicks never woke me up. And so I was like, oh, this is kind of weird, but I didn't think anything of it. Tried to go back to sleep, couldn't go back to sleep. So I started timing them. They're about 15, 20 minutes apart. And I realized, okay, these actually have more of a consistent timing, and they're enough to stop me from sleeping. Like, resting wasn't stopping them. And usually with Braxton Hicks, if you lay down, they stop. So I got up and I was like, okay, well, if this is the real thing, like, I'm going to let my husband get some rest. I'm going to get my electrolytes, maybe get some food in me. I really wanted to do my makeup so that I would look good for pictures. So I went into the bathroom, started doing my makeup, and I was standing up. The pressure and the intensity of that was so much. I was like, yeah, I need to hurry and finish this. So I put on some mascara, and I'm like, I need to get upstairs, because I had been practicing the Bradley method my whole pregnancy. I knew that I wanted to try to have a pain-free, or at least more manageable labor. So I had practiced these techniques of relaxation, and I knew that I needed to, if things were already going to start picking up, which I wasn't expecting them to. I thought I was going to have an early labor, that I needed to get into that state of relaxation. And things were going a lot faster than I thought they were going to. At this point, they were less than 10 minutes apart, and it felt like they were coming back to back every time I stood up. So I tried to get upstairs to my room, but I had to lay down on the couch because they were so hard to work through, and I couldn't move. So I lay down for another contraction, and once that one had stopped, I booked it up the stairs, and I woke up Sam, and I'm like, I'm in labor, get up. And he helped me get all comfortable and set up on the bed so I could get in that relaxed state. And I was like, dude, these are really coming close together. They were starting to be like 5 minutes apart at this point. And he had asked me, like, do you want me to call your mom? And I'm like, no, I don't want to wake her up. I don't want to bother her, because we could still have a while. I mean, usually I could have like 12 hours. I don't know. Like, women, labors are all over the place, but average, I think, is about 12 hours. And so I'm like, we could still have a while. Well, I did that for, I don't even know, like maybe 3 more contractions. And then I was like, call my mom. So my mom and my friend, who was coming to help us as well, they got on their way. And by the time they got there, my contractions were less than 5 minutes apart, and I couldn't even talk to them. Like, when they came in, I didn't say anything to them. They just came over and started giving me the support I needed. And they were timing contractions, and they were realizing that they were getting really close together too, and they were lasting for a while. So obviously they were doing something, but it felt like an eternity. Like, when you're the person in labor, you're like, this is never going to end. So I remember I wanted to like move around and make sure that I was like in different positions, but I couldn't do that. Like I felt like I was just like paralyzed in pain, and I couldn't get into that mindset of relaxation like I wanted to because I skipped early labor and I went right into active labor. And I don't know if that's because of my Braxton Hicks, my whole pregnancy, that my uterus was working so hard in advance to skip that part. But I was thrown into active labor, and they kept asking me what I wanted to do, and I was just like, no, I can't get up, I need to do this. And eventually I was like starting to get kind of like self-doubt, delusional, like I can't do this, maybe I should have gone to the hospital, I thought I was going to be stronger. And when you get to that point, like unless you actually have a stalled labor, that is your sign that you are about to have your baby. You're probably in transition, if not about to be. And I knew that, like all of our research we had done, I had known that that was going to happen. But I was just doubting myself, and I even at one point was like, I'm going to die. Like that pain is so hard. So I felt like it was going on forever, and I tried to check myself to see how dilated I was. Yeah, that wasn't going to happen. I couldn't even like reach up there to feel my cervix, and it was so painful. So my mom offered to do it for me, and laying down to try to get checked was so difficult, especially being on my back. I didn't even let her get a good check. I was like, nope, nope, we can't do it. But she said like when she felt up there, she's like, it's hard. And at that moment, I was like, no, like, there's no way I'm not dilating. Even though, like, I should have known, like, of course I'm dilating. That probably means that there's nothing left. And so a lot of, like, everyone was kind of discouraged for a minute and confused, not knowing what was going on. Um, but I was like, okay, then I got to get moving. So I got on my hands and knees to get things moving along. And within minutes of me being on my hands and knees, my water broke. And I knew what that meant because even in my inductions, after my water broke, within the hour I had the baby. And so I was like, okay, this is real. Like I didn't really feel real leading up to this because it hasn't happened yet. You're like, oh, I'm gonna have a baby. Yeah, I'm pregnant. Oh, yeah, I'm in labor. But at that point, I was like, I'm about to meet my baby. Oh crap, I have to push this baby out. And so I knew things were getting real. And so I had to decide, well, how was I going to push this baby out? And I was already in that position and I really didn't want to move. So I stayed in that position and I was like, I think I need to poop. And when you feel like you have to poop, that's because the head is coming out. And lo and behold, she was coming out. And I gave one big push because like don't if you feel like you have to push, like don't resist that urge to push. I gave one big push and her head started to crown. And I knew that when that was happening, I needed to stop pushing. I didn't want to tear, but I asked, like, wanted to confirm, is she crowning? My mom said, yeah, do not push, like, hold back. And that's the hardest thing to do is to hold back when all you want to do is just, ooh, and like let her go out. But I like held on for dear life, like, don't push. And the fetal ejection reflex came. I stopped pushing but my body was pushing. So the fetal ejection reflex had kicked in, and my body pushed her out, which is the best thing you can do if you want to avoid tearing, is just let your body do its thing. And so my mom was telling me that they saw her head come out and her eyes were open, and she like they just slowly see these eyes coming down, and then she goes, ah, like as her head came out. And I tried to not push or do anything, just let her come out. And on the next contraction, her body came out and they had to catch her. But my cord was really short. And so I ideally wanted to reach down and grab her. But I, first of all, was in a weird position. I was on my hands and knees. I could barely move. I don't know why I was so like paralyzed with pain. And my mom was holding on to her. And I just had to sit back, so they had to like help me like put her underneath my legs and bring her up to me after I had sat down. But my cord was so short, I was like hunched over holding her like this. And I sat back as my mom and my friend checked me out. Um, what I forgot to mention was part of the way through, I think I was like either right before my water broke or a little bit after, my sons had woken up. My sons wake up very early, so I had a feeling that this was going to happen. At about like 4 to 5, they woke up, and my mom went and checked on them. And they weren't scared. They knew I was in labor. We had talked to them about this, prepared them for this, and they were just like, yeah, mommy's okay. And they went downstairs and hung out with grandpa. So that was great. But shortly after I had her, they came in and they met their sister, and the whole bed was covered in fluids and um, vernix, and they were like, "This is gross. I'm gonna go play." But so they had that moment where they saw her, and then they left. But the first thing she wanted to do was nurse. She's never stopped doing that, actually. She loves to nurse, which was just great. So I nursed her, and within a half an hour, I was like, dude, this placenta needs to come out. I feel so uncomfortable. And I think the reason why it was like coming in very quickly or good timing was because of the nursing. So I decided I was going to try to push it out. And so I just made sure I had a good hold on her and kind of like squatted a little bit on the bed, and it came right out, and we caught it in the bowl, and it was cool to like see my placenta and what had provided that nutrients for her. And of course, we waited until the cord was white, stopped pulsating, and we cut it, and no complications. It was, I don't know, everything I knew that was going to happen. I didn't bleed out. She was fine. She was breathing fine. Her airways were clear. Like, I don't know, all these concerns about shoulder dystocia or that I would hemorrhage or whatever, all these fears that other people had that they put on me, I rejected all of them. And I put all my trust in God, and I asked him every single day, like, Lord, if it's your will, I ask that you would let this happen, that you'd let me have this birth that I'm dreaming of, despite the fears that I might even have. Like, I didn't know what could happen and what other people are telling me are going to happen. He gave me that. He gave me that birth, and everything went amazing. So, I guess I would say the moral of this is, if you feel that the Holy Spirit has put on your heart to have some, not even just birth, but any situation, lean into that. Trust that. Do your due diligence, do your research, make sure that you are prepared for that. You're willing to take responsibility, but don't let anyone else steer you away from that. There's a verse in the Bible, or a few verses, that really stood out to me, and I'm going to read it to you. It is in Matthew chapter 7, starting in verse 7. It says, Ask and it shall be given you, seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. For what man is there of you, whom if his son ask bread, you shall give him a stone? Or if he ask a fish, will ye give him a serpent? If ye being evil know how to give good gifts unto your children, how much more shall your Father which is in heaven give good things to them that ask him? So I knew that God wanted to grant the desires of my heart as long as they were according to his will. And so I prayed for that. I prayed that he would help me, that I would surrender it to him ultimately in his will and to reality of what may happen. I mean, the unexpected happens all the time. Trusting that he is a just and sovereign God that would do what is right, protect me and my baby, but also that his plans are better than mine. He designed childbirth, he designed my body to do these things, and that I knew that if I was going based on the way he designed things to be, and I asked him and I seeked it and I did my research and best I could to prepare, and I was prepared with research and knowledge and how to resuscitate and do all these things, that he would grant me that, and he did. So, do I believe that every woman should have an unassisted home birth? No. Do I know if I will have another unassisted home birth? No. Obviously, I would like to have a midwife there, but there is also this freedom and peace that comes with being able to be in a safe environment without being told what to do or pressure, and to just tune into nature the way God planned it to be. Do I wish I didn't feel like I was put into that position and that I could have done that out of my own choosing? Yes. And there's plenty of women who find themselves in that position, and many women who choose to do it. And I don't judge anyone as long as they are being responsible and safe and are not negligent. So I hope that my birth story can be an inspiration to you to lean in to what God is telling you, to seek him, to trust him. And ultimately, like, I would say my number one thing was surrender all control and give it to God. And that's what got me through my pregnancy, labor, and delivery. And I would do that a million times over just to have that redemptive birth that I got to have with her. And so I really truly believe that everything I went through with my first and second pregnancies and deliveries led me to this moment to bring me that much closer to God. And I think it was probably, aside from the day that I was born again, the best day of my life. And I saw God in his glory and what he can do. So that's my birth story, my unassisted home birth story with my third baby. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next week.